I Only See Strangers, Chapter 14, Inquest. As I entered the court this morning, nobody acknowledged my presence. I wasn't in the mood for doing one of my good morning experiments, so I sat down in an empty row around the middle of the court behind two women. The usher, a thin, hook-nosed man with gentle, light blue-grey eyes, waited for me to take a seat before he made slow, steady steps in my direction. Is there anything I can get you, madam? Madam? It sounded odd. Surely you can see my pronouns are loser, wanker, waster, arsehole. I had a go at smiling. Double whisky wouldn't go amiss. I took it to full decibels. No one takes me hostage with their silence these days. Not even Dolly's family. One of the women in front of me was of large build with frizzy blond shoulder-length hair. The other had a short black crop and a dolphin tattoo on the back of her neck. When the dark one turned her head to talk to the other one, her profile started several chemical reactions in my body all at once, making me feel like a test tube. Only once before, a year ago, at the chapel of rest, had I come anywhere so close to Dolly's living and breathing genes, and it was kind of weird. It clicked then that this must be the same sister, but she must have dyed her hair. That sister that was at the chapel of rest. Dolly's sister. The pair of them were studying paperwork in bulky black ringbinder files. In the second row from the front was a stocky grey-haired man, and in the front row was a slim blonde woman in the kind of suit which doesn't mess around. Without a doubt, one of the briefs. At the end of the front row, on the right, was a darker woman, slightly incognito, dressed in a style that was very deliberately impromptu. I had noticed her as she had passed me on the way in. Then there was an older woman, and she had short grey hair. And then after a couple of warnings from the usher, the coroner entered the court through a door at the front. He was beefy, around early 60s, thick, woolly grey hair, one of those wide, rugged noses which is all nostrils. He had thick Dennis Healy kind of eyebrows, sprouting out like those random clumps of grasses that grow between patches of mud after too much rain. Everyone stood up on the call to rise. The jury entered through a side door on the right. By the time I'd made out of my chair, the whole lot had sat down again, so I gave up the effort. The first person called to give evidence was Dolly's GP. He had one of those faces you can't remember even while you're looking at it. Nothing to hook onto. The eyes, the nose and mouth too blended in with the turf. It was hard to spot anything there whatsoever. There's tons of those types wandering about in the outside world. There's been times when I found the whole high street littered with them. It makes me crack up laughing. I make a point of looking down on those occasions, so the telltale snorts exploding out of me don't look like they're aimed at any specific point on the compass. Turns out this GP didn't know Dolly at all. I only met her once on a mission. He pissed me off straight away by saying he wasn't aware of any history of anorexia, and there were no signs of any eating disorder. You could tell he'd not really looked at her medical records. It was a gradual thing. I don't remember when she first started telling me she stopped eating, but it's got to have been 3 months before she died. She wanted to eat, that's what she made out, but the staff were bastards, wouldn't let her. They insisted meals were supposed to be eaten in the dining room, and off plates and with knives and forks and all that crap. Her point was that she was scared of going in there, because of bullying by the other girls, so she was asking to eat in her room. They weren't having none of it, though. She kept on about it. How much weight was dropping off her. It spun me a bit, mainly because I approached these things like a typical bloke would, really. She had it all. She was a big girl, but just the right amount of big, and she was pretty skilled at presenting all that. The low cuts, cleavage, suspenders, heels, the lot. She knew exactly what she did to men, and how to get the mugs locking horns over her, while playing innocent. I don't know why she was starving herself, but she hated Radford. She claimed she was being bullied by the other girls, or one patient in particular. Things had started to look up though. She had been offered a place in a recovery unit in Plymouth, not that far from where I was staying. The bed was actually there waiting for her. The sticking point was the MOJ, Ministry of Justice, snails in their cabbage patch. They had to okay it. And while we were waiting, though, in those last few months, Dolly was disappearing bit by bit. The cleavage and soft-rounded buttocks went at lightning speed, followed by the rosy, fleshy cheeks and generous thighs. I was getting edgy then. If I'm honest, what was really bugging me deep down was that the whole lot would be gone before we could be together for real, on any level. She made a point of how anorexia had just about killed her once. Boasted she'd been 3.5 stone. It was bollocks, but enough to scare the crap out of me. I couldn't picture that. That wouldn't be Dolly. My fears were confounded when she sent me her Facebook profile. I was confused as to why she had posted an old picture of herself as a schoolgirl. In the picture she looked around 13 or 14 years old, until she told me that was a recent picture, taken at the hospital. But Dolly was 29, and very much a woman. I was scared then, for selfish reasons, and she knew that. She wasn't stupid. It was very possible that she'd starved herself even more to test me. I hurt her, and she cut deep. There's no denying that. The last thing her GP mentioned was that she had just had sertraline, an antidepressant added to her medication. The coroner then turned to the front row and nodded towards the smart, slim, blonde brief. Counsel for Mr. Neely, do you have any questions for the witness? She stood up. No, sir. I could only guess that Mr. Neely was the stocky grey-haired man in the second row, and that he must be Dolly's dad. The coroner then asked the same question of the other lawyers present, and they had no questions either. He then nodded towards the frizzy-haired blonde woman directly in front of me. Miss Carrigan, do you have any questions for the witness? She stood up. She had a large frame, like Dolly, but her backside was flatter and shoulders slightly rounder. No, I don't, sir. Even from behind, I could tell she wasn't the woman from the funeral who I'd mistakenly had down as Dolly's mum. The family hadn't introduced themselves to me that day, nor approached me at all, so it was guesswork. I got blank before and after the service, except by Dolly's sister Lottie, who briefly acknowledged me. Dolly's mother sat down again. I was itching to see her face now. Her back didn't appear distorted or lumpy, the way a monster should have. It wasn't fitting the character I knew only through Dolly's bitter words. It looked too human. The coroner turned to me. Ms. Wheeler, do you have any questions? The Ms. made me cringe. I forgot to stand. No. I also forgot the sir bit, or your honour, or whatever the protocol is. It's hard to let people know how to address you when you haven't yet worked out who you even are. I thought I'd tweaked it once, but that's bull. There's me and me and me and me and flipping God knows how many more me's in other places. I do know one thing, though. Not one of those bastards could really fit in the category woman. I mean, yeah, we're all in a female body, but that's about it. And more to the point, my family have never met any of them. It did come dangerously close once to one of me's breaking loose on the phone to a frail 90-year-old disabled woman. Strange, isn't it, what old age can do to hominids? The last time I spoke to my mum, she'd been to lunch with an old neighbour, Tanya, who she reckoned had asked after me, and I asked her what she'd said. Well, nothing really. Just that you were fine. Right, so nothing about my partner just dying then. Tanya doesn't want to know things like that. I could feel my blood starting to boil. What, you mean Tanya doesn't want to know I'm gay? People don't want to know those type of things, Stephanie. I lost it then. You know what? I'm not Stephanie. I'm not even Steph. My name is Casey. And get this, I never want to see you again. It was a landline I was on, an old GPO phone which I bought for backup when the satellites go down. When I slammed it down, I could hear the bells suffering. The victory didn't last long, though. After I called down, it was obvious that it didn't look too clever screaming at a 90-something-year-old woman on the phone like that. 2 weeks later, my mum did something that blew me away. She sent me a cutting from a paper about a trans woman, all about her life and how difficult it had been. I cried then. All the rage went. Those tugs still happen on those strings from time to time. Old dears don't just drop them as they age. They reinforce them with steel or fibre optic cables straight to their control panel. The ultimate camouflage. Who knows how much advanced weaponry is tucked away behind that frame or that scooter thing as they charge along the pavement, scattering pedestrians. The second witness of the day was an agency nurse called Joan Brillier. She had been working over the weekend before Dolly died. She explained that she had observed Dolly in the communal areas before Dolly took leave from the ward on the Sunday. She wasn't concerned about anything, and she reckoned Dolly presented, that's one of their buzzwords, as stable in mood. She reported that Dolly had gone straight to bed when she came back from leave, claiming she felt ill. The nurse had left her shift at 6 p.m. The slim blonde introduced herself to the witness as Miss Tyler Jones. Counsel for Mr. Neely, Dolly's dad. Would you mind telling the courts, Nurse Brillier, whether it is not correct and standard procedure to assess a patient before they go out on leave? Yes, it is. Was Miss Westerly assessed before she left the ward on the Sunday? Well, that would be done by one of the senior nurses. Miss Tyler Jones is looking down at paperwork. I have a copy of the Section 17 leave paperwork here for the period of leave Miss Westerly took on Sunday the 10th of January. The coroner held his hand up and addressed the nurse. Could you explain to the court what Section 17 leave paperwork is? Yes, I can, sir. It's the form that is filled out when a patient detained under the Mental Health Act is granted leave. The coroner nodded. Thank you, Nurse Brillier. He turned back to the brief. You may put your question to the witness now, Miss Tyler Jones. Thank you, sir. She picked up the piece of paper. Miss Westerly's name is here, and the date and time, but there doesn't appear to be anything filled in regarding her state of mind or suitability for leave, and the form is not signed. Do you know why that's the case? I don't know. It was not my duty to assess Miss Westerly. Thank you. I have no further questions. Dolly's mother didn't have any questions for the nurse, so it was my turn next. I stood up this time. You said you observed Dolly on a Sunday morning and she appeared stable, but did you speak to her at all? Not directly, no. So how can you be so sure of someone's mood if you don't ask them? Behaviour is a good indicator. I stalled a moment on how to come back on that, and the coroner was in there. Thank you, Miss Wheeler. Behaviour is a good indicator. Not when people know they're being spied on by the health police, and Dolly was a good actress. I know how these people make simplistic assumptions, and I am sick of being known from the outside by wankers who know jack shit. They review books by scanning the cover and then assume they understand the plot. During the tea break, it was Dolly's mother who broke the ice. She stood up and turned around to face me. No shadow of animosity, just a very human being. Casey, did she ever say anything like, Her voice tailed off then. I rate her for that, for ditching her pride, offering an olive branch. We're never going to be friends, but there's no payout for either of us if we remain enemies. We both want the same thing, the truth, and we both know that there's no guarantee we're going to get it. Layla continued. Look, did she say Did she say much about me? I paused, but knew I couldn't leave too great a gap. Not really. I was lying to buy time to work out what to say. No, the thing is, she did sometimes just say, you didn't really like her get on that well. Dolly hated her mother. And Layla was no doubt very well aware of the sort of words Dolly used to describe her. She loved me, really, It was just when she was one of her blaming moods. I could have said something like, I can't imagine where she could have got them from, but I didn't. I had been on the receiving end of the blame for Dolly's death via text from her mother a couple of days after the funeral, and I put my hands up to it. I've got at least a PhD in scapegoat skills. Dolly's mother shook her head slowly. Look, I know you loved her. I've read your letters. I didn't mean to. It's okay. Doesn't matter now. I know exactly what she could be like. Dolly, she weren't easy. Layla turned back round now to speak to her daughter in a lower voice. As she did so, Dolly's sister glanced at me, and the same feeling hit me as it had a year ago. I know her well without knowing her at all. Lottie has Dolly's eyes. Mother and daughter flipped through the bulky file in front of them together. Of course it was Lottie. It was just that her face had dimmed in my mind. At the chapel arrest she had blonde hair, and she'd been clutching a rusty ring that Dolly had been wearing when she died, the one that Dolly had insisted on wearing just because I gave it to her, even though it was way too small for her ring finger, and had caused it to swell and turn blue. Lottie had asked me if I minded if she kept it. I looked down at the two black ringbinder files in front of me. They contained Dolly, in the eyes, ears, and nose of the mental health system. I knew it would be a warped version of Dolly. If my own file is anything to go on, truth would be in short supply. Dark thoughts would be marked as threats. Justifiable anger would be aggression. Healthy mistrust would be paranoia. And positive efforts forgotten or ignored. I flicked through Dolly and landed on an entry about her shoes. Dolly was dressed provocatively this morning in the day room. XXXXX crossed out, asked her to get changed into something more suitable, but she refused. Later she took off her high-heeled shoe and stabbed another patient with the heel. The heels had been taken off her now and locked in the patient's storeroom. I couldn't help smiling. We had pissed ourselves laughing when they ransacked her room to confiscate all her heels. Dolly was back on red then. There was this stupid rag system which meant red, amber, green. It was like snakes and ladders. You had to climb to the top to reach green, and then you got privilege for being able to go in the garden for 10 minutes. If you slid down to the bottom, you were on red. That was the naughty corner. On red, you had everything taken out of your room. No furniture or CDs or anything. No OT, occupational therapy, no smoke breaks, nothing. That's the forensic system for you. Locked up with no time limit and bribed with measly carrots at the top of a poxy ladder. 100% biased towards bods with legs. So the fuck-ups don't stand a chance. If they make it to amber, some kind of fluke, they soon slide down a bit again. There's no justice. Why would there be? Justice only ever has to be seen to be done.